Tales from the wild. Stories from the heart. A journey into the mind and soul of fired-up business professionals where they share their vision for the future. And hear from a different non-profit organization every month as they create awareness of their goals and their needs. Dive into a world of untamed passion as we join our host, Shireen Buerta, for this month's episode of Friends from Wild Places.
Yeah, that's very important. And with that being said, Phil, that is the non-profit of the month that we're going to support
Okay.
this month, and that's the Mental Health America of Southeast Florida. Listeners, we will put the link in the show notes for you to reach out. But Phil, what are some of the ways that we could support Mental Health America of Southeast Florida? How are the different ways that we can support you guys?
Yeah, well, we are a local affiliate for Mental Health America. We're also like Mental Health America is throughout the country, um, and we're the Southeast Florida affiliate. So yeah, I mean, we listeners could donate to our organization, and it's real easy to see how to do that. You go to the homepage, and there's a place to click on the top right-hand side that says donate, and you could scroll down and click on the lost team. Yeah. Because what we do, even more so than just showing up, is we provide wraparound services for the families and those the loved ones. So sometimes there's a need for help with cremation or expenses or lodging because maybe someone doesn't want to stay in the place where they found them, right away, or clearly food or um, this might be something too, just to kind of like kind of prepare your listeners for as I'm talking about it, because something that maybe folks don't think about, and it could be kind of activating, is biohazard cleaning. In some ways that someone dies, you might have to get biohazard cleaning to come to the scene or the site. And interestingly enough, I think this is important to share when we talk about serving others and maybe even this idea of helping people financially. When someone at a crime scene, or when someone, let's say, dies by, as a victim of a crime, like a homicide or a murder, at least in our area, there are with victim compensation programs. So there could be some money that could help people with a sudden funeral or cremation expense or biohazard cleaning or getting therapy for trauma or a victim. But because suicide is not a crime, I mean, yeah, it used to be centuries ago in the century, but there aren't resources available to help persons that have just experienced this sudden traumatic death.
Mm.
So what we try to do is we try to come in and fill in the gap. So we that's where we come in. We work with the United Way. We have some funding, but clearly it's not enough to help all the families that are in need.
Mm.
So that's a big way to help the families. And then we also run support groups ourselves, peer support groups. We have about 6 or 7 a month, depending upon the theme. Um, so donations go through help supporting the facilitation of those groups. And then we do events throughout the year as well. Remembrance events, other community building events, trauma-informed kind of healing events, things like that.
Mm. Thank you so much for your work. We really appreciate you and what Loss is doing. And, you know, there's so many people that are suffering in silence.
Yeah.
And when, when people get left behind after their loved ones have committed suicide by whatever they
Mhm.
choose, however they choose, those people left behind, they've now got to pick themselves up and
Mhm.
try and survive this world that we're living in right now, which is not a
Mhm.
very pretty picture, as
Right.
everyone's seen right now. The world is actually um, it's been at its best. It's been better, but what I'm trying to get at, and I think is so
Mhm.
important, is You might not be able to save everybody, but you can save one person.
Hmm.
You can help one person.
Yeah.
And one person is more than enough. Please.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's if I think people, I don't know if people just feel overwhelmed. They go, "Oh, I can't save everybody. I'm just not going to
Yeah.
try." But please don't have that mindset because if one one person, one kind act, one little bit of assistance, that donation that you're going to give to that mental health organization so that they can do good for the community, that is more than enough. You got to keep on doing the little wins, the little
Hmm.
tiny little acts of kindness that you don't think is affecting anybody or anything. It is. It is. Because you join another 10, another 50, another 100, and they're all trying to just help a little bit, and that little bit or added together is a lot. So please, listeners, take some time out and really help. If you can, help. Give your little
Yeah.
bit, however that may look, just give. Um, and you'll actually, it'll enlighten your life as well. So,
I appreciate you saying that because just what you were just kind of came up for me with that is yeah, the world is so overwhelming, right? And I know personally I could get very cynical. And I think that's why when I brought up the whole quote before, it was like, oh, quotes, and I would be the change you want to make in the world. It's like, well, what can I do? I'm just like, one person, right? Right. But if it's anything, I think that actually Nicole was here to show me that her death could teach me was that, one person can make a difference. Yeah, and that's now how it is for me moving forward. Because you're right. Um, something just to kind of add is that those who are left behind by suicide research has shown that we are as survivors, more vulnerable to suicide ourselves. So really what our program ultimately is a post-intervention program is to help prevent further suicides after a suicide, right? So
mm,
um
Yeah.
so that kind of like even just saving one life, yeah, is so profound. So I appreciate you brought that up.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
Sonia, do you
Dr.
have
Phil.
more questions you'd like to
Yeah.
ask before I?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Phil, for just, sharing your journey, your work, your mission, and your vision with us. So, as a funeral director,
Hmm.
I have served many, many families with loved ones of suicide in many different ways from different ages. The youngest I served was 11 years old, and the
Hmm.
eldest was mid 70s. So, quite the range of people. Would you mind, Dr. Phil, sharing maybe just some statistics, some,
Hmm.
do's and don'ts, as far as what are the statistics as far as, currently that we have worldwide or nationwide. And if maybe you can also share some things to say and don't say, and, just maybe some helpful tips for all of us to learn from you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, statistics, they are kind of staggering. I mean, I believe the World Health Organization, shows that between like 800,000 to 1 million people die by suicide across the world every year. Um, and studies show that for every suicide, 135 people are affected. And even more particular, kind of like that could be folks that hear about it, maybe even like, on the news or online or something. That's the reach. But even within that, like about 20 persons are in that person who's died kind of intimate circle. So even just think of that, 20 people times, 1 million. I mean, that's a lot of people that are affected by a suicide. Yeah. Um, Statistics generally show that suicide occurs more in men than in women. However, women attempt more because sort of some of the knowledge around that is that men are more likely to use uh, a fatal means like a gun, whereas a woman might use pills. So that's something that isn't as, let's say, immediately fatal. Um, But, we could talk about statistics, but like I said, I've met with, hundreds of families over the years and, even in my own experience, right? I mean, Nicole used kind of a fatal violent way, that maybe women don't use. So like it's really hard to say, right? Suicide does not have a face though. I mean, it like you were kind of mentioning, Dr. T, it's all colors, shapes, sizes, faiths, everything in between, right? Unfortunately, we are seeing more young persons now. Um, so from a statistics standpoint, that would be kind of like a basic overview that I can give you at this time. Sometimes people think like, oh, it really doesn't happen in my community. Like well, when Nicole died, like I was really like I remember thinking about this when I was waiting for the police to arrive. I was like, oh, this was like five people, you know. And then I come to find out that in pretty much all of our big counties here in the US, like let's say like we're 2 million people in Broward County, we have about 230, let's say, suicides a year, and that's about the ratio. So where I was living was a big county too. So it was like, oh no, it was not five people this year. It was 230,
Yeah.
that's a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And how about some tips as far as what to say, what not to say, the do's, the don'ts?
yeah. One thing that about the language, and this is not something that we're like sticklers about because clearly, there's a lot of sensitivity around speaking about suicide, especially to a newly suicide bereaved. But we do try to stay away from the word committed, and that's just become such a phrase though in our society, committed suicide. But we rather say died by suicide because it helps to soften or um, you know, kind of turn away from this idea that our loved one committed a crime, or maybe they even committed a sin, because that's a whole other thing, and we could kind of go into.
Yeah, we have another podcast on that, Dr. Phil.
Yeah, we got a whole thing on that. So like the idea of committed, though, kind of, whether it's intentionally or not intentional, it kind of reinforces some of that shame and stigma. So we say died by suicide, or we say things like, they died by their own hand, or they took their own life. Um, some of our survivors, even say, my so and so, my husband, my wife, my mother, my father, whatnot, died from their struggle with mental illness. And now you're really kind of opening up a lot more of that
Yeah.
conversation, right? So those are a couple of things. You know, general things, as I'm sure as a funeral director, is that like, like I know how you feel, that's not very helpful.
Right, right.
Or someone sort of equating, we see this a lot, and folks want to be helpful, but sometimes it's more hurtful, like equating a suicide death just to like, maybe a natural death or a death of a pet, and I think it's just because we don't know what in society, we don't really know how to deal with grief and loss, let alone, a stigmatized grief like suicide. So you're going to sort of want to search for things, and you want to be compassionate, you want to help, and you might say things that are a little bit more hurtful than helpful. So just keeping it sort of simple, less is more. Like some folks don't like the I am so sorry or I'm sorry, but that's kind of a general thing. I'm sorry this happened in your family, not like to your family, because that kind of again victimizes folks. Or if someone's talking about their feelings, like rather than I understand how you feel, more like it is understandable. So sort of just generalize and sort of neutralize, or less is more, some of these statements. Just I'm here for you. That could just be a very simple one. I'm here for you. Um, so those could be some of the simple ways that you could help somebody in sort of speaking terms.
Okay. And before we get into our, wrapping up our podcast and, turning it into a little bit more of we'll do a little lighthearted wrap-up session here, almost like a debrief. I just want to ask you, Dr. Phil, can you share with our listeners if somebody is either thinking about suicide or having suicide ideations, or maybe sees somebody in their own circle of friends or family, is talking about it the right thing, the wrong thing? What are
Yeah.
some don'ts in that you can just leave our listeners with some nuggets so they can go into the world and
Yeah.
be better humans?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So research also shows us that asking someone the question about suicide will not, or is not, or does not put the idea in someone's mind. So, because sometimes I think that's why people are fearful of that, is that even if they're kind of even thinking like, oh, well, this person might, or even just kind of asking someone, it's a very scary thing. And so have the confidence in knowing that if you feel like someone is going through a struggle, that you can ask them about their suicidal thoughts. And there's a couple of ways to ask. You ask directly. You don't preface it like with, "Oh, you're not really thinking about do it," blah blah blah, because then you're already kind of shaming someone, or you just got to be real direct and
Mm,
and empathetic about it. Like, are you having suicidal thoughts? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about taking your life? Those are three ways that we're trained on how to ask. Saying
what if,
things like, were you
yes,
thinking about hurting yourself? That's different. But go ahead.
what if the answer is yes? What do you do? So now we have the
Yeah.
question.
So then if the answer is yes, because it's very scary. So, in a certain sense, be aware to stay calm. You could immediately call the 988 crisis line. Now, I don't know if that's international, but clearly in the United States, right? Um,
Nine,
so
eight,
call a crisis line 988. They changed it recently to make it simpler. So like there's 911, right? You call that for like a police emergency or a law enforcement, right? Or a rescue emergency. You could call 988 if someone's having suicidal thoughts. Okay.
okay,
But there's also another sort of element to this because someone might be having thoughts and you want to get them to a crisis line. You don't want to leave them alone. You want to get them to the next level of help or care. Maybe they have a therapist that you could get on the phone with them. Do you want to get someone that's having thoughts to that next higher level of care, like a crisis line or maybe like a therapist, without leaving them alone, staying on the phone with them, calling for them, that sort of thing. If someone is thinking about suicide and then they've mentioned, or if there was an indication, or even if you asked if they had a plan, or like, do you know when you're going to do it or how you're going to do it? And they say yes, and they describe any parts of that to you, then you're going to want to call for immediate help
intervention. Yeah.
intervention. And there's a couple of ways you could do that in your community. I mean, first and foremost, if you want to call the police, do so. You call 911, you call the police, and many areas have what's called a crisis intervention trained or critical incident trained officer that could come with more knowledge about how to deal with mental health crises. Because again, some folks might not want to call police on someone because they think, oh, they're going to come and get arrested or put handcuffs and they're going to be taken to a psychiatric hospital, which may be the case, and it may be the safest thing for them at that time. But rather than sort of thinking about all the what ifs and your struggle with that, ask for an officer who's trained in these types of situations, right?
Mm, very
Some
good.
areas have what's called mobile response teams, like we have here in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, and that would be a team that could come out if someone's not in immediate acting on their suicidal ideation. Still, if they're thinking about it, and maybe you just see maybe they're not acting right, they're saying they hear voices, even things like that. A mobile response team of trained clinicians could come out and do an evaluation and then see if that person would need to be hospitalized. So there's a
Wow.
lot of different ways, but
Yeah.
if anything to leave with your listeners, it's, get that person to the 988 crisis line. Don't leave them alone. Check in on them. If someone's even just saying they're thinking about killing themselves, whether their intent is real or not, it's still a cry for help. So it's an opportunity to open up that connection to get person to the next level of care.
Hmm.
Right. Right.
Well, thank you very
And
much. I
I'll
really,
leave you with this, Dr. Phil. I just want to, I'll close out my session and then I'll turn it over to Shireen. If you want to share with our listeners, maybe 1 to 3, what's your vision? What's your mission? What do you want them to get from your podcast? Is there anything that you need or want or share? So what would be your 1 to 3 things just to share with the world?
Yeah, absolutely. That you're not alone, that you're not alone in any of your mental health, whether it's struggles or whatnot. So you're not alone. Reach out for others and connect. Um, if you are having suicidal thoughts or know that of someone who who is, get them to 988, get them to, local one-on-one therapists, um, check in with each other. Yeah, and then I guess thirdly, just yeah, support those programs out there that are doing this kind of work. So support your local law team, and we'd love for you to help support Mental Health America of Southeast Florida.
Awesome. Amazing, Dr. Phil. I'll turn it back over to Shireen and
Thank you.
any last minute questions, and then we'll do probably a lighthearted exercise to wrap us up.
Well, actually with that, I don't want to. I think what we've been speaking about here is very serious. And we are doing this in the month of September for Suicide Month. I don't want to, it just doesn't feel right to now play a game. So I'm going to skip that part. And I'm going to rather just say, listeners, you've heard it here. You've heard all the questions and Phil really sharing his heart. And we have a nonprofit for this month to help with people that unfortunately have been left behind and have gone through an experience of someone loved one taking their life. Or you might know of someone that you have a hint that they're struggling and you want to try and offer some hope to them. We've given you a whole lot of helplines. We've given you ways to support. We'd really appreciate you seriously to think about how you can support your own community. There's a mental health organization for every country, internationally, locally. So please do your bit.
Shireen, may I do a debriefing exercise? We won't call it a game, but may I do a debriefing exercise with both
Yes,
of
of
you?
course. Actually,
Okay,
go ahead.
okay. So, no, the reason is because as funeral directors, there's a process that we do when we're dealing with such strong emotions that may bring up during a hour, 2 hour time frame. So, as our listeners, if you're listening to this entire podcast, and I have my friends Shireen and Dr. Phil with us this morning, as we debrief, I just want everybody to just inhale deeply through your nose. Try to hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release through your mouth slowly. We don't want to hyperventilate. Let's do that 2 more times. In through your nose. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release through your mouth slowly. And 1 more time. In through your nose. Deep, deep breath as we go out into the world. Exhale through our mouth. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, as slow as we can go. And I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions just as we close out this most intense podcast, but very, very open-minded as we go sharing our kindness in the world. So I'm going to ask your favorite book that you could share with our listeners, whether it has to do with inspiration, motivation, or just your all-time favorite book. So Dr. Phil, what would you want to share for your favorite book?
Well, you did. I'd have to say the Bible.
The Bible. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then I want to ask you a little bit more specific on the Bible. Do you just randomly pick it up and open to a page and that's your page of the day that you're supposed to learn something? Or how
Yeah.
do you read it?
Yeah, I mean, I read it all, but open it up, and I don't say that in a way to sort of like, impose a certain view or anything. It's more about just eternal wisdom, and eternal universal wisdom. As I study different faith traditions, there's so many common themes. So what I love to get is out of the Bible are clearly those common, simple themes. Yeah.
Simple themes, simple. Okay. That's the theme of today. It's like keep it
Yeah.
simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it
Exactly.
simple. Keep it
There's
simple.
so much, but in
Yes,
reality, it's
simple.
really just simple. Yeah.
All right, Shireen, how about you? A book, motivation, inspiration, something that just, what do you want to share with our listeners?
I'm just gonna keep it lighthearted. I always love The Lord of the Rings. Those are always my go-to
Mm.
books to read. So Yeah, it's me.
Awesome. Awesome. And my favorite still has not changed. It is the body keeps the score.
Yes.
And I think that kind of ties into Dr. Phil's mission as far as releasing. Sometimes we have emotions that get trapped within us. And whether you're a chakra type person or just whether you're holistic, Eastern or Western medicine, sometimes we have emotions that get trapped. And if you suffer from chronic headaches, stomach aches, back aches, sore throats, anything like that, read The Body Keeps the Score. It will literally help you disengage the emotions that are locked in your body. So people through a shock release generally have a really tremendous way to do. All right, and last, before we close out, what is one technique when you just get overloaded? What is one thing that you can just count on every time to do? Is it music? Is it getting your favorite food? Is it going to sleep? What is it? So Dr. Phil, we'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely art. Definitely, like I know when I need to make a piece of art. That
Art.
helps.
Okay. All right. And Shireen, how about you? When you're super stressed, what's one thing that you can always count on to do that will bring you grounded?
That would be hiking.
Hiking. Okay. All right. And I will conclude with my pillow.
Yeah.
My pillow is my safe space. So if I just have to take a break, meditate, sleep, my pillow is my go-to. So Shireen, I'm going to expect you got to check with your parents and find out what your
Yeah.
word was. So we can have a part 2 of this podcast and we'll continue on that theme. So, all right, listeners, for my part, I leave you with Friends from Wild Places. It's been an amazing journey this morning. And where can we find you? Where can we find you, Dr. Phil, if we want to find more information? Our listeners want to get in touch with you. Maybe they have more questions. Maybe they would like you to be a guest speaker at their organization for, maybe some, holistic exercises, even team building workshops. I do appreciate you coming into Miami-Dade College, our restorative art class, and you did a phenomenal workshop there. Our students are still talking about it. So I definitely want to have you back in our classroom, but where can people find you? Not only students, where can people find you?
Yeah, I shared with Shireen my LinkedIn profile and my email and my personal phone number. So yeah.
Okay, so Shireen will get that in the show notes. And how about you, Shireen? Where can our listeners find you? Maybe they want to be a future guest on the podcast. Maybe they have bookkeeping needs. Where can our listeners find you?
Well, let's start with you, Tanya, and then we'll end with me. How's that?
Okay. So for folks finding me, many of the listeners know I am a licensed funeral director, embalmer in the state of Florida. I oversee the mortuary program at Miami-Dade College. So anybody that's interested in pursuing a career in funeral directing definitely can reach out to me. I also work in the senior space, matching people with communities who can no longer live alone, perhaps due to cognitive or physical challenges. And I also serve as an expert witness in the funeral home and cemetery cases. So for folks finding me, I do live on LinkedIn. You can find me at Tanya Scotisi. LinkedIn profile is right there for all 3 areas of need, or if you just have something that you would like more information on that I've talked about this morning. Back to you, Shireen.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Tanya, for doing that. So yes, you'll find me on LinkedIn as well with Tanya. Shireen Buerta, as well as Shireen's Bookkeeping Services, is the business that I run. You can also find Friends from Wild Places on YouTube, but the website is friendsfromwildplaces.buzzsprout.com. That's friendsfromwildplaces.buzzsprout.com. If you would like to go and get some more content on mental health, we did have our visitor Damien O'Brien on not so long ago for the Switzerland mental health development program. So if you want to go and listen to some more ways to help each other, be there for each other, help yourself, please go and take a listen. Please subscribe. It's only $5 a month. We'd really appreciate your every support. It really means so much to myself and Tanya. And with that being said, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time, guys. And remember, you got this, and stay wild. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Friends from Wild Places with Shireen Buerta. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast from the links to catch every episode and unleash your passion.